A 6-year-old girl handed a handwritten letter to a stranger on the street, and she had no idea that man was the one she'd been writing to her whole childhood. That man was her biological father. It was an ordinary morning in New Orleans. The city was still buzzing, crowded, and bursting with color as Mardi Gras season lit up the streets. Lucas Reed, a high-profile CEO in the finance world, had just stepped out of a downtown hotel. A hot espresso in one hand, his mind was packed with back-to-back meetings, multi-million-dollar deals, and spreadsheets. His Italian leather shoes tapped sharply against the worn cobblestone sidewalk, catching flashes of sunlight. He didn't have time for distractions until a tiny voice rose beside him. "Mister, this is for my dad. But if you see him, could you give it to him for me?" Lucas froze. A little girl with curly blonde hair, a floral dress, and a cat-shaped backpack was holding out a pale blue envelope. Behind her stood another girl, nearly identical, like a miniature copy, clutching her sister's hand, wide-eyed. "I don't know where my daddy is, but Mommy says sometimes nice people can be little miracles." Lucas let out a short laugh, awkward and uncertain. "What's your daddy's name?" "I don't know. Mommy never told us." He took the envelope, part curiosity, part politeness. But when he opened it, his hands began to tremble. Crayon written in purple, uneven and childlike, but it hit him like a punch to the chest. "Dear Daddy, Mommy cries at night. I wish I had a real daddy. I hope you're nice. Love, Emma and Lila." In that moment, Lucas knew he couldn't just walk away like any other stranger, because Emma and Lila were the names of the 2 daughters he never knew he had. Lucas couldn't remember how long he stood there, under the New Orleans sun, with that trembling letter in his hand and 2 pairs of wide, wondering eyes looking up at him, as if he was the man they'd been waiting for their whole lives. He crouched down, closer, looked harder. One of the girls, Emma, if he guessed right, tilted her head and studied him. "Are you a nice person?" It wasn't fear in her voice. It was hope, the kind that had been bruised too many times. Lucas nodded slowly. Even though deep inside, it felt like his whole past was crumbling around him. He knew those names. Emma, Lila, and he knew the woman who gave birth to them. Harper Bennett, the only woman he'd ever loved enough to walk away from everything, and the same woman he'd abandoned when she needed him most, because he was too afraid to become a father. Without thinking, he asked, "What's your mom's name?" Emma answered right away, without hesitation. "Her name is Harper. She's really good at painting, but she's sad a lot. Mommy says grown-ups need miracles sometimes too." Lucas felt like something wrapped around his heart and squeezed tight. He stood up, panicked. His eyes scanned the crowded street, and then he saw her. Harper, across the road, stepping out of a small shop, holding a paper bag. Her brown hair tousled by the breeze, her face just like in the dreams he'd tried to forget for 7 years. But what knocked the air out of him wasn't just her face. It was the fatigue in her shoulders, the cautious, guarded way she walked. She hadn't seen him yet. But Lucas couldn't look away. He turned back and asked the girls gently, "Would you take me to meet your mom?" Lila nodded, still clutching her drawing, and the 3 of them crossed the street, through honking cars, blaring brass bands, and the rush of Mardi Gras foot traffic. But for Lucas, in that moment, the world had narrowed down to just the 3 of them. Harper looked up, and their eyes met. She froze. The paper bag slipped from her hand. "Lucas?" It came out in a breathless whisper. She stepped back, instinctively placing herself between him and the girls, a shield made of pure motherly instinct. Lucas raised both hands, voice cracking. I didn't know. I didn't know anything. Not until the girls handed me this letter." Harper took the letter. "Read it," and her eyes filled with tears. "Why now?" she asked. Not angry, just tired. 7 years. I've raised them on my own for 7 years. Do you even know your daughter once asked me, "Does my dad not have a name?" Lucas stood in silence. That sentence, it tore through every wall he'd ever built around his heart. He didn't make excuses. He didn't beg. He just said one thing. "I don't deserve forgiveness. But, will you let me start from nothing?" Harper didn't answer right away. She bent down, picked up Lila's drawing. A picture of a family, mom, dad, 2 smiling little girls. She drew you from her imagination. And the sad thing is she got it right. Hours later, Lucas sat alone in a quiet cafe. The letter lay on the table in front of him. Guilt, regret, pain, all of it crashing down like a wave. It all started with a letter he never thought he'd receive. And now, He finally understood. The girls weren't the ones searching for their father. It was fate that had brought a father back to them. Monday, Southside Elementary School, New Orleans. The schoolyard buzzed with laughter. A giant banner flapped in the breeze. Dads and Donuts Day. Welcome super dads. Dads holding little hands. Grandpas hugging grandchildren. Neat rows of donut boxes lined the tables. Kids wore paper sashes and proudly shouted what their dads did for a living. In the far corner of the schoolyard, one seat sat empty. Emma sat quietly, clutching a small milk carton, her eyes fixed on the school gate. Lila pretended to be busy coloring, like nothing was missing. Harper walked over, knelt down beside them, gently brushing Emma's hair. I took the day off to be here, sweetheart. Emma gave a faint smile, then looked down. I know, Mommy, but today's Dad Day. The words trailed off like a cold wind cutting through the bright colors of the morning. Across the street, Lucas Reed stood just steps from the gate. Tucked in the pocket of his light blue shirt was a letter, folded and worn. Emma's letter. Today, he wasn't wearing his signature gray power suit, just a button-up and khakis. He looked less like a CEO, and more like a man trying to become a father. He had almost turned back, almost walked to the hotel, but Emma's eyes from that afternoon still haunted him. He stepped inside the schoolyard, and the air shifted. Two teachers stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. The whispers followed like shadows. Is that the dad of the twin girls? Didn't he disappear before they were even born? Bet he's feeling guilty now, trying to play hero. Lucas heard every word. Each one cut deep, but he didn't stop walking. Emma looked up. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but surprise. You really came? Lucas nodded, kneeling beside her. I didn't make promises before, but I'm here now. She was quiet for a second, then reached out, grabbed his hand, and led him to the empty chair. For a moment, the entire schoolyard seemed to hold its breath. Harper stood in the back, holding a coffee cup tight in both hands. She watched her daughter lean her head onto the shoulder of the man she once thought was gone forever. After the sing-along, kids started sharing stories about their dads. A boy spoke proudly about his firefighter father. A girl beamed talking about how her dad played guitar. Then it was Emma's turn. She stood up, voice soft but steady. My dad's never been here before. Today's the first time. But my mom says, someone who shows up when you need them the most. That's a hero. Lucas didn't look up, but his eyes burned red. When school ended, Lucas hesitated, planning to slip away. But Emma held his hand. Can I call you Dad? Just to try it, if you want me to. That simple question struck like lightning in a clear sky. Lucas nodded slowly, his throat tight. I'd love that. Emma smiled, and for the first time, she whispered, Thank you for coming, Dad. Lucas walked out of that school that day, no longer the man who once ran, but a man learning to stay. For two little girls. For a second chance, even if it came late. That night, the tiny third-floor apartment on the edge of Bywater was as quiet as always. Emma and Lila had fallen asleep after their mom finished the princess story, reading slowly, like she was trying to stretch out every peaceful minute. Harper stepped onto the balcony. In her hand was a chipped ceramic mug. The coffee inside had gone cold, but her thoughts were burning hot. Lucas had come. He actually showed up. He sat in a chair that, for 7 long years, Harper had tried to fill in every way. With work, with new love, even with silence. And now he was back. No explanations, no promises, just a look, and a presence that shook everything Harper had tried so hard to keep steady. Then came a knock. 3 knocks. Harder than usual. She didn't need to check. She knew who it was. Harper opened the door, and sure enough, Thomas stood there. Cold stare. Crooked tie. That suffocating office cologne. You've had your phone off all day. I went to the school, and I saw him. Harper stepped aside without a word. She didn't want a scene. Didn't want to wake the kids. Thomas walked in, peeled off his jacket, and tossed it onto the couch. I thought we were past this. You said he didn't matter. Harper leaned against the kitchen doorway, holding her ground. I thought so too. So what now? You're just gonna let him stroll in and out of your life. Into the girls' lives, like he never left? They're not your girls. Her voice was calm, clear. For the first time, she said it out loud. Thomas stepped back, stunned, then scoffed. Right. They're not my blood. But who's been here, huh? Who paid rent? Who rushed Lila to the ER when her fever hit 106? Harper didn't answer. She couldn't deny those truths. But then she looked up. And who told me that if I ever dealt with my past, I was failing as a mother? The air in the room grew heavy. Thomas stared at her, then said, his voice lower now, "I can't be with someone who doesn't know what she wants." Harper replied simply, "Then don't." The door closed. Firm. Final. No need for another word. Harper walked back to the bedroom and sank beside her daughters. Emma shifted in her sleep, still gripping the corner of her blanket. She mumbled, "Daddy, don't go." Harper's hand trembled as she brushed her daughter's hair. And in that moment, she knew. Life was never about choosing right or wrong. It was about having the courage to choose what scared you most. Lucas showed up at the weekend market for one reason only. A short message from Harper. "My mom wants to meet you. 10 a.m. Farmer's Market on Chartres Street." That was it. No more, no less. But it was enough to make his heart pound like a drumline. He wasn't afraid of being blamed. He was afraid because the last time he'd seen Harper's mother, Margaret Bennett, was 7 years ago, in her living room, right after Harper walked out of the bedroom, with a pregnancy test in her hand and panic in her eyes. Now Margaret was sitting at a small plastic table, a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. Her white hair was pinned neatly back, her cardigan old but clean, her face as stern as ever. Lucas approached, nodded politely. "Good morning, ma'am." "Sit down," she said flatly. Lucas sat, hands on his knees like a schoolboy waiting for detention. She stared at him for a long moment. Then straight to the point. "I thought you were dead, or at least gone for good, like a coward." Lucas didn't flinch. No excuses. Just a quiet nod. "I'm not here to justify anything. I was wrong. Deeply wrong." "You're right," she replied slowly. "But the blame doesn't fall entirely on you." Lucas looked up. That wasn't in any version of the conversation he'd imagined. Margaret sighed, set her cup down. "Harper wrote to you, right after the girls were born. And again a few years later. I know this because I was the one who kept the letters." Lucas froze, eyes wide. "What?" "I tore them up. Every single one." The market buzzed all around them, but all Lucas could hear was the pounding in his ears. "Why?" "Because I was scared," she admitted without blinking. "You were still just a boy. You ran when it mattered most. I didn't want Harper to pin her hopes on someone who didn't deserve her." Lucas clenched his jaw, fists tightening in his lap. "And you thought keeping a father from his children was protecting them?" "Back then, yes." She took a deep breath. "But now, I see the way Emma and Lila look at you. Like they found something they didn't know they were missing. I see how Harper doesn't flinch anymore when your name comes up. Maybe I was wrong." Lucas closed his eyes. A wave of grief hit him, not for what he'd lost, but for the time he could never get back. "I can't rewrite the past," he whispered, "but I can help build their future." Margaret stood slowly. "I'm not forgiving you, but if you're serious, then don't disappear again." Before leaving, she placed an old envelope on the table. On the front, in shaky handwriting, "Lucas, read, for if you still care." Lucas opened it with trembling hands. Inside, the first letter Harper ever wrote to him. 7 years old. Ink faded, but the words clear. "Lucas, I'm scared, but if you're here, I won't have to be strong all by myself." Lucas left the market that day, not as a man who had found love again, but as someone who finally received a letter that arrived at the exact moment it was needed most. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. The little park at the end of the street was bathed in sunlight. Swings creaked in rhythm with the birdsong, and the sound of children laughing echoed through the warm air. Lucas sat on a bench by the grass field, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. The lids were decorated with messy hearts drawn in marker. Because, as Lila insisted, you have to draw something if you want to be a real dad. Emma and Lila were running around with the neighborhood kids, their floral dresses twirling, hair tangled in the breeze, cheeks flushed with sunlight. Lucas watched them, as if trying to imprint every moment into his memory. Because he knew, beautiful things are often fragile, especially when they're just beginning. After a while, Lila ran back and plopped down next to him, panting. "You should drink this. It's hot, but really yummy." Lucas smiled. That one word, Dad, made something in him stop for a second. No one told her to say it. No one asked. But she chose to. Emma joined them, sitting on his other side, still clutching her frayed stuffed bunny. Then her voice rose softly. Clear. Honest. "Dad, are you going to leave again this time?" Lucas froze. Not because he was surprised, but because he knew. She'd been wondering that since the moment they met. Back then, Mom used to stare out the window at night, She told us she was waiting for the mailman, but we knew who she was really waiting for. Lila chimed in. Mom always baked 2 birthday cupcakes, but only ate 1. Did you know that? Lucas nodded, throat tight. He set his cup down, then slowly leaned forward, meeting both girls at eye level. I didn't know. I'd missed so much. But I do know this. He looked at each of them gently. I was wrong to walk away, but this time, I'm staying. No matter what, even if you're mad, even if you stop calling me Dad, I'll still be here. Emma bit her lip. Tears welled up. So, if we're bad kids, will you leave again? Lucas shook his head firmly. No, because real love doesn't depend on how good you are. It only needs one thing, that you be exactly who you are. Both girls threw their arms around him, pressing their faces into the fabric of his shirt, as if they'd finally found the safest place in the world. A father who once disappeared was becoming the home they never had. That night, Harper walked into the girls' room and found Emma sketching a picture. On the paper were 4 people, 2 children, a mother, and a father holding a letter in his hand. What's this one called, sweetheart? Harper asked. Emma replied instantly, without even looking up. It's called The Letter's Been Read. We don't need to write any more now, Mom. 3 days later, Harper received a message. No punctuation, no emojis, just 4 words. We need to talk. The sender, Thomas. She read it, then deleted it, but the words didn't leave her mind. That evening, just as Lucas had tucked Emma and Lila into bed after their bedtime story, the doorbell rang. Harper didn't have to look through the peephole. She already knew. She opened the door. Thomas stood there, same office suit, tie loosened, face thinner, but his eyes, sharper than ever. I have nothing to say, Harper said, already pushing the door closed. Thomas stopped it with his hand. You really think I'd walk away that easily? After everything? Harper gripped the door harder, steadying her voice. I don't love you, and the girls aren't yours. I've said that. Thomas smirked. All right, they're his. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. He set it carefully on the door handle. Did he tell you? About that night? The real reason he left? Harper's brows knit. Her heart began to race. Thomas leaned in, his voice like poison. I saw Lucas, in your last month of pregnancy, behind the Brooklyn bar in the parking lot. He was drunk, ranting, saying things no one should ever say if they're about to become a father. I drove him home, heard him with my own ears. He said, I don't want those kids. I can't be a dad. I'll burn it all down if I have to. Harper shook her head. You're lying. No, Harper. I know because I was there. And I kept that secret for 7 years. I stayed quiet so you could live in peace. But if you're thinking of letting him back in, his voice dropped. I can't promise you, or those kids will stay at peace. Silence. Then Harper whispered, Are you threatening me? Thomas laughed softly. I'm reminding you, not everyone who comes back deserves a welcome. He turned and walked away down the hallway, said nothing more. Harper stood frozen, the envelope cold in her hand. She didn't open it. Not yet. She sat on the floor, surrounded by shadows, while the rest of the house slept. Half of her wanted to believe Lucas. The other half didn't dare. Around midnight, Lucas came downstairs for a glass of water and saw the living room light still on. Harper sat on the couch, holding the envelope. Her eyes were red. He walked over. Who came by? Harper looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas. He said, You said something back then. About the girls. Lucas didn't flinch. The pain of 7 years ago returned like a blade. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I know I was awful. I was scared. I ran. And maybe I said worse things than I even believed. He looked her in the eyes. But that man, he's not me anymore. And if you need time, I'll wait. Harper held his gaze for a long moment. Then she folded the envelope, still unopened. I don't need to read his words. I want the truth from you now, not anyone else. Lucas nodded. She rested her head on his shoulder, said nothing, but she let the envelope slip from her hand, falling quietly to the floor. Another letter left unread, but this time, because trust had grown strong enough, that it didn't need to be opened anymore. Monday, Lakewood Elementary School playground. Harper held Lila's hand as they walked through the school gate, while Emma walked beside Lucas, her lilac backpack decorated with tiny stars swinging on her shoulders. Everything seemed normal, until the look started. Not friendly, not curious, but the kind of stares adults reserve for someone who shouldn't be here. Lucas felt it immediately. The whispers, turned backs, the high-heeled footsteps deliberately stepping farther away. Harper slowed down. She sensed something was off. Just then Emma's teacher, Ms. Jenkins, approached, her expression serious. "Good morning, Harper. Mr. Reed, I need to speak with you privately." Harper gently squeezed Lucas's hand, then turned to him. "I'll walk the girls to class. Wait here." Lucas nodded, though his eyes didn't leave Ms. Jenkins's tense expression. A few minutes later, Harper returned, pale, her eyes burning with restrained fury. "Someone sent an anonymous email to the school. Said you abandoned your family. That you're unfit to be around children." Lucas felt like he'd been slapped. "What else did they say?" "That you have a violent record. That you're unstable. Unsafe." Lucas inhaled sharply, his fists clenched. "None of it is true, Harper. I have no record. I've never laid a hand on anyone." "I know," she nodded. "But that's not the point. They don't want the truth. They want to protect their version of safety." Lucas looked around the playground, at the same parents who had smiled at him just a week before. Now they looked away, silent, distant, as if he were a stranger who didn't belong in his own children's lives. Then a small voice spoke behind him. "Daddy's not bad." Emma stood there, hair slightly messy, her backpack hanging to one side, gripping a box of crayons in both hands. "He didn't do anything wrong. He reads me stories. He holds my hand when we cross the street. He doesn't yell. He doesn't hit." Everyone turned. Startled, Emma walked forward and stood in front of Lucas, a 6-year-old shield between him and the world. "Daddy left before, but now he's back. He said he'd stay, and he did." From a few feet away, Lila ran up and clung to his leg. "Yeah, and Daddy makes the best waffles." A few people chuckled. Not many, but enough to break the tension in the air. Ms. Jenkins lowered her head slightly. I'm sorry. Maybe we rushed to judge." Harper stepped closer. She took Lucas's hand, and for the first time, in front of everyone, she didn't let go. That afternoon, Lucas picked the girls up from school like usual. On the walk home, Emma leaned in and whispered, "I was scared, really scared, but I thought, if Daddy was still standing there, then I should stand with him." Lucas couldn't speak, but he squeezed her hand, gently, firmly, like a promise he'd never break. And in a place where people judged more than they listened, a 6-year-old taught everyone a lesson. Not everyone who once left deserves blame. What matters more is who came back and chose to stay. That week, Harper found a plain brown envelope in the mailbox. No return address. It sat there neatly, like it knew exactly when to arrive. Inside were unfinished divorce papers. At the bottom, a handwritten note. "I can make all this go away if you come back. Thomas." That night, just after Lucas closed the bedtime storybook, Harper placed the envelope on the kitchen counter. She didn't say a word, but the look in her eyes, Lucas understood. "I don't want you to choose between me and your peace," Lucas said quietly. "If going back makes you breathe easier, I'll walk away." Harper looked at him for a long moment, then let out a dry laugh, half tired, half defiant. "You think I'm scared of Thomas? I'm not. I'm scared of myself. Scared that I'll make the wrong choice again. You're not the same man you were, Lucas, but I'm still the woman who once let herself stay in a life she didn't deserve." Lucas stepped closer, took her hand, gently, not to hold her back, just so she'd know he was still there. "Harper, you don't have to choose me. Just choose yourself. And if any part of you still wants to move forward, I'll be right here, every step." The next day, Harper met Thomas at a coffee shop downtown. She wasn't the quiet woman from 7 years ago anymore. She sat down, back straight, voice steady. "You sent me divorce papers. Good. I'll sign, but not because of your little offer. I'm signing because I'm no longer a woman who needs permission." Thomas narrowed his eyes. "You think he's gonna change your whole life?" Harper smiled, calm, unshaken. "No, I think I'm the one who changes my life. You, and my past, you can stay there." She stood, pulled out a pen, signed her name without hesitation. "And don't send me any more letters. Next time, I'll forward it directly to my attorney." Thomas said nothing. No threats. Nothing left to hold on to. He just watched her walk away. And this time, it was real. That evening, Harper came home. Lucas was washing dishes. The girls were coloring at the table. She walked in, hung up her coat, then stepped toward him. "I made my choice." Lucas turned, his eyes searching hers, not quite ready to hope. Harper didn't say another word. She wrapped her arms around him, resting her head against his chest, the place she once avoided. Now it felt safe. What choice? Lucas whispered. I chose to stop running. There was no grand declaration of love that night. None needed. Just two people, in a small kitchen, surrounded by the soft laughter of children, and a sink full of freshly cleaned dishes. And Harper knew, for the first time in years, she didn't need to write another letter. The one who needed to read it was already here. Sunday, 4 p.m. The sky above the little backyard dipped low, as if it were holding a secret just for them. Lucas stood at the kitchen sink, hands wet with soap suds, stealing glances out the window where Emma and Lila were playing. Harper sat on the porch steps, reading, her hair tousled by the breeze. She smiled, so faintly that if you weren't paying close attention, you might think she was still sad. But Lucas knew it was the smile of someone finally at peace with themselves. For the first time in a very long while, he dried his hands, took a deep breath, and walked outside. Hey princesses, can you come inside for a minute? Dad's got something to ask. The words made Harper look up. Lucas met her gaze and gave a quiet nod. There was no fear in his eyes, only the calm certainty of someone who had walked long enough to know. This was exactly where he was meant to be. In the living room, Lucas sat on the floor. Emma and Lila settled in front of him, each hugging a stuffed animal. Do you remember the first time we met? He asked softly, as if beginning a fairy tale. Emma nodded. I gave you my looking for a new dad sign, but I didn't know you were already him. Lila giggled. We thought you were going to say no. Lucas smiled and slowly reached behind him for a small wooden box. 2 dried maple leaves were pressed and taped to the top. He opened the lid. Inside were 2 silver necklaces, each with a tiny heart charm engraved with the names Emma and Lila, and in the middle, a folded sheet of paper. The official adoption request. He didn't say much, just looked at them. I know I wasn't the one who brought you into this world. I wasn't brave enough back then, but now, every single morning, the first thing I think about is how to make sure you both feel safe and loved. He gently placed the necklaces into their hands, then continued, his voice shaking slightly. I'm not asking your mom. She's already forgiven me. I'm not asking the grown-ups. I'm asking you, if you'd let me be your real dad. Not just the one who reads bedtime stories or packs your lunch, but the one whose name is on your school files, your medical forms, your life. Forever. Emma looked at Lila. Lila looked at Harper. Harper said nothing, just smiled through damp eyes. No prompting, no pressure. This was their choice. Lila spoke first. So, that means you get to sign my birth certificate? Lucas nodded. Emma looked up, eyes glistening. So later, when we're big, we can tell people. We had a dad who chose us. Right. Lucas choked up. Yes, that's exactly right. The girls looked at each other. Then together, like they had practiced it all their lives. Then we choose you. Lucas pulled them both into his arms. He didn't cry out loud, but his shoulders trembled as he held them. Harper quietly stepped into the room. She wrapped her arms around all 3, her family. Bathed in the soft golden light pouring through the windows, they sat together, held together, as if they had never been apart, as if this, right here, had always been home. Outside, the rain began to fall, but inside that little house, it felt like spring. A late autumn morning, King County Courthouse, Seattle. The air was thick, not with tension, but with the weight of truths buried for 7 years. Truths that were about to rise. Thomas, crisp in an expensive suit, sat at the plaintiff's table, his private attorney beside him. On the other side, Harper sat with her court-appointed lawyer. Her hands rested calmly on her lap. But her eyes, they were fixed on another man, Lucas. He sat just behind her, not avoiding, not bowing his head. This hearing wasn't about the past. It was about one question. Was Harper fit to have full custody? Or would the man once called husband win the rights back? Thomas was first to take the stand. His voice was calm, practiced. I was never violent. We argued. She left. There's no valid reason for her to have sole custody. I can provide better. Harper's attorney didn't push back much, because their final card wasn't evidence. It was her voice. Harper took the stand. The court asked her to explain why she left the marriage. She breathed in, didn't look at Thomas. She looked straight at the judge. Your Honor, I don't have photos or recordings. Because when you live in fear, you don't think about proof. You just think, how do I survive this? I wrote letters to myself. Every time he yelled. Every time I clenched a pillow not to cry, I wrote. But I never mailed them, because I didn't believe anyone would ever believe me. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a bundle of worn paper, ink faded. These aren't evidence. They're the voice of someone who was silent for too long. The courtroom fell still. Then Lucas stood. Harper's lawyer nodded. This they had planned for. Lucas stepped slowly to the witness stand. No suit. Just a white shirt and a handkerchief in his pocket, embroidered with Lila and Emma. His voice was low, steady. I used to be a coward. 5 years ago, I walked away from Harper. From 2 daughters I hadn't even met. But I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to speak truth. For the one who stayed behind. He looked at Harper, then at the judge. Harper is the strongest woman I've ever known. No money, no family, no safety net. She raised 2 girls into kind, resilient little humans. Today, those girls call me Dad. But it's Harper who taught them to love, even after being hurt. He paused, then reached into his pocket again, pulling out a single letter. I once found one of the letters she never sent. And in it, she wrote, "If one day my daughter asks why I left her father, I won't say he was bad. I'll say, because I wanted her to know. Love should never come with fear." The courtroom went still. Lucas lowered his head. "I'm not asking for anything. But if justice means anything, let it belong to the person who woke up every day to protect her children from a past no one else could see." That afternoon, after hours of deliberation, the judge read the verdict. Full custody is granted to Harper Claire Jensen. The biological father is deemed unfit due to prior conduct and lack of stable environment. Outside the courthouse, Lucas took Harper's hand. He didn't say anything. Harper turned to him, smiling softly. "For the first time, I don't have to protect myself." Lucas gently tightened his grip. "From now on, you don't have to write another letter. If you ever need to say something, I'm right here." A court ruling may end with paperwork. But for Harper, it was the quiet closing of a life lived in silence. And the first time she ever stood up, not with someone who promised to fix the past, but someone who vowed to protect the present. A gentle spring rain fell over Seattle that morning. At the end of Mulberry Street, the little house was quiet as usual, except for the laughter of 2 little girls echoing from the kitchen. "Dad, the toast is burning." Lucas spun around from the pan, hands clumsy but eyes full of joy. Harper stood nearby, tea in hand, watching quietly, as if this one moment was enough to make up for all the years she endured in silence. She no longer wrote letters late at night. She no longer needed paper to explain the loneliness or the fears no one else could see. Because now, whenever she felt weak, there was a hand to reach for. No words needed, just presence. That Saturday, Lucas brought home a small gift. No ring box, no bouquet of flowers, just a simple wooden box with a lock. Inside, a printed copy of the official adoption papers, his name now next to Emma and Lila's. A photo of all 4 of them, arms around each other, covered in flour, hair a mess, laughing like kids, and a leather notebook titled, "The Letter She Finally Mailed." Harper opened it. On the first page, one handwritten line. "Thank you for not waiting for someone perfect, but choosing someone willing to learn how to love from the beginning." She smiled. Not the smile of someone who had just been loved, but the smile of someone who had finally learned to forgive herself. If you've ever written a letter you never sent, if you've ever been silent through long nights, if you've ever thought, "No one's coming, are they?" then remember, the one who's meant to come will. But first, you have to choose yourself. Don't wait for someone perfect. Choose the one who's willing to heal with you. And don't be afraid to start again, because this time, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from strength, forged through tears, fear, and every time you got back up. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs the reminder. You deserve a love that never asks you to stay silent. And if you've ever been a Harper or a Lucas, leave a dove in the comments. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there is still waiting for the letter you never sent.